My name is Margaret Williams, and I am 62 years old. Last week, my only son Ryan called to tell me I was no longer welcome at his wedding. His fiancée, Ashley, said she didn't feel comfortable with me there. Ryan asked me to be understanding. As if a mother could ever understand being erased from her own child's vows. I hung up the phone, poured a glass of wine, and opened my laptop. By the time I finished that glass, I had already mapped the timeline for what would become the most talked about wedding video of the year. Some people will say I crossed a line. Others will say I saved my son from a lifetime of betrayal. I know this much: when your child is about to bind himself to someone built on lies, you either stay silent or you strike a match. I chose fire. What followed turned a beach ceremony into a national spectacle and exposed every secret Ashley thought she could bury in the sand. So let me tell you how it all began. When I closed my laptop that night, I set 3 rules for myself. First, I would never invent anything. Every frame, every second of what I revealed would come from real events, with timestamps to prove it. Second, I would never cross the line into hacking, trespassing, or stealing. I spent my career as a forensic accountant, following paper trails and documenting fraud. I know how evidence holds up, and I wasn't about to risk my son's trust by cutting corners. Third, I would only strike when the truth spoke louder than excuses. Ashley loved excuses. She could twist any story until Ryan doubted his own eyes. This time, her words would not save her. The stakes were brutal. If I was wrong, I would lose Ryan forever. He would see me as a bitter mother sabotaging his marriage. If I was right, the fallout would be public, merciless, and permanent. There was no middle ground, and I knew it. I also knew something else. Ashley had underestimated me. She thought a 62-year-old woman could be dismissed as clingy, outdated, or harmless. But I had spent decades dissecting numbers, catching cheats who believed no one was watching. Ashley was about to learn I had been watching all along. By Thursday afternoon, I had enough hints to risk watching Ashley more closely. I stayed well within public space. No trespassing. No tricks, just observation and record-keeping. The same way I had handled fraud cases for years. I began with her lunch breaks. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she left her design studio at exactly 1:15, returned at 1:30 sharp. The routine looked harmless until you matched it with Cole's sailing schedule. His marina lessons ended just before noon, giving him a 90-minute window. I took notes like I always had. Not just times, but light, weather, direction of traffic. Evidence is fragile if you can't prove the context. On one Tuesday, I positioned myself near the harbor parking lot. At 1247, Ashley arrived in her SUV, checked her phone, and slipped into the same corner space she had used the week before. 5 minutes later, Cole strolled out of the marina office. He carried nothing but a duffel bag, and instead of heading toward the dock, he walked straight to her car. The camera caught him leaning into the window, handing her a small key ring. Ashley's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. She stepped out, smoothed her hair, and kissed him on the cheek quick, but careless. And right there in the open, the lens froze that moment. Time-stamped and undeniable. I pulled back and kept rolling. They drove away together toward a stretch of apartments I already suspected. It didn't matter what excuse she would give later. I now had visible contact, physical intimacy, and a clear pattern. Ashley could claim stress, friendship, even professional meetings, but the truth was already on film. And this time, her words would not erase what my camera had captured. Once I had the footage, I knew the evidence alone wasn't enough. Ashley was skilled at twisting words, And Ryan was desperate to believe her. If I confronted them privately, she would spin the story until my son doubted me again. The only weapon strong enough to break her narrative was daylight. That night, I created a new account. Carefully anonymous but polished enough to look legitimate. I called it Truth on Tides. The name felt fitting. Secrets might hide for a while. But eventually the tide pulls everything back to shore. I built the profile like a documentary channel, posting quotes about honesty, short clips of ocean waves, and captions that hinted at exposure. Nothing outrageous. Nothing personal yet, just enough to gather curious eyes. The first teaser was simple, a wide shot of the beach at dusk. Waves rolling in. The sound of gulls overhead. The caption read, "Some vows don't survive salt and light." Within hours, people began liking, commenting, asking what it meant. It was exactly the kind of quiet storm I wanted. I scheduled the real post for 7 o'clock Sunday morning, hours before Ryan and Ashley's honeymoon flight. By the time they reached the gate, the tide would already be turning. The truth was packaged, timed, and waiting. All I had left to do was press publish and watch the current take hold. On the morning of the wedding, I moved carefully through the resort, blending in with the bustle of vendors and guests. By then, the cameras and files were ready. But I still wanted to know what Ashley planned beyond the ceremony itself. I didn't have to wait long. Outside the bridal suite, I adjusted the lens on my camera, pretending to check settings. While the real work came from a small directional mic resting on my bag, through the door I heard Ashley's voice, sharp and certain. The same tone she always used when she thought no one could challenge her. She told one bridesmaid she had already accepted a job offer in California. She laughed when she said Ryan would follow without hesitation. According to her, he was soft, and she could steer him wherever she wanted. The words cut deeper than I expected. Betrayal wasn't enough for her. Control was the real prize. She wasn't just marrying my son. She was building a plan to separate him from everyone who cared about him and reshape his entire life under her terms. I studied my breathing, memorizing every phrase. Ashley didn't know I had already uncovered the down payment she placed on a studio in Los Angeles. $24,000 tied to a business account in her name alone. Now her own voice confirmed the rest. Evidence of an affair was damaging. Evidence of calculated relocation and manipulation was devastating. And soon, both would meet the tide together. The ceremony began at 4 o'clock sharp. Golden light washing over the beach as Ryan stood waiting in his linen suit. Ashley floated down the aisle in her designer gown, flawless as any magazine spread. Guests dabbed their eyes as the officiant spoke about honesty, loyalty, and commitment. I kept my camera steady, recording every perfect frame. I already knew what would follow, and the contrast was the weapon. Inside the ballroom that evening, speeches painted Ashley as devoted and selfless. Ryan's friends toasted to his good fortune. Their first dance to At Last drew sighs from the crowd. I captured it all, each frame designed to pair against what came next. Near 10 o'clock, Ashley slipped away from the dance floor, holding her stomach as if a headache were coming on. I followed at a distance, keeping to the shadows. She crossed the boardwalk, heels sinking slightly into the damp sand. Waiting for her was Cole Turner, dressed down, hands shoved into his pockets as though he belonged anywhere but here. They walked a few yards from the reception lights, just far enough that the music softened into background hum. Then she reached for him. The kiss lasted 3 minutes, slow and deliberate, her veil lifting in the breeze as Ryan laughed inside. Oblivious. My lens caught the timestamp, the ballroom glow behind them, proof of 2 worlds colliding in one frame. Ashley whispered about leaving in 2 hours. About a room waiting nearby. Cole nodded. Careless with his promises. I didn't move until they separated. On my screen, the split was already forming vows and betrayal, side by side. By the end of the night, the evidence was whole, ready to meet the tide. At 7 o'clock Sunday morning, the post went live. The first few minutes were quiet. A handful of comments. A dozen likes. By 8. The view count had passed 50,000. By 9. It was climbing so fast, the counter looked broken. The split-screen edit hit like a tidal wave, Ashley and Ryan promising eternal love on one side. Ashley and Cole kissing on the beach on the other. No excuses. No blurred lines. Only the truth side by side. The caption was short. Some vows collapse before the night ends. The comments exploded. Strangers debated whether love could survive this. Whether the groom deserved pity or praise for his blindness. Half the audience called the videographer a hero. The other half called them ruthless. Both sides kept watching. At 9:30, my doorbell rang. It was Ava Turner, Cole's wife. Her face pale but determined. She told me she had suspected for months. But seeing the timestamps confirmed everything. She carried receipts, lease agreements for a small apartment Cole had hidden. Her voice shook. But she thanked me. She said her children deserved the truth. No matter how cruel. By the time Ava left, the video had crossed 2 million views. The tide had turned, and nothing would be washed away again. Ryan showed up at my house late that evening. His shoulders heavy. His eyes rimmed red. He looked older than he had the week before. Like the weight of a marriage barely begun had already hollowed him out. He sat at my kitchen table, the same place where I had once helped him with algebra homework, and asked the question I knew would come. Did I make the video? There was no anger in his voice, only exhaustion, and something more dangerous hope. He wanted me to deny it, to tell him the storm outside was just a cruel trick from strangers. I didn't lie, but I didn't confess in the way he expected either. I told him I made sure the truth was seen. Nothing more. Nothing less. He lowered his head, his hands twisting together. Part of him still wanted to protect Ashley, to believe her excuses about cold feet or stress. But every time he looked at her, he said, all he could see was the tape. I didn't press him. I let the silence sit. The truth working on him in ways my words never could. Whether he hated me or thanked me, he now stood at a crossroads, and whichever path he chose, Ashley's mask was already shattered. Ashley arrived 2 days later. Sunglasses, masking her eyes. Her movements sharp and restless. She didn't knock. She walked straight into my living room as if she still had authority in this family. Her words spilled fast. A mix of fury and desperation. I had destroyed her life, she said. Her job demanded she take a leave. Clients had canceled. And Cole's wife was filing for divorce. She wanted me to take the video down. To admit this was nothing more than a mother's vendetta. I let her talk until the air was thick with her anger. Then I asked the only question that mattered if the roles were reversed. Would she want to know? The silence that followed was louder than her accusations. When she finally spoke, the excuses shifted. She called it cold feet, said the affair was stress relief. A mistake meant to end with the wedding. But her voice cracked when I laid out what I already knew: the down payment of $24,000 for a Los Angeles studio. The business account in her name. The plan to uproot Ryan without his knowledge. Her mask slipped. Her face pale beneath the sunglasses. For the first time, Ashley had nothing left to spin. The truth stood in front of her. Undeniable and complete. Ryan met with an attorney the following week, carrying a folder of evidence he never expected to hold on his wedding day. The video clips. The timestamps. The apartment lease. Even the business account tied to Ashley's name together. They painted a picture of fraud clear enough to stand in court. The lawyer told him he had grounds for annulment. Not just divorce. Ashley had concealed material facts and entered the marriage under false pretenses. Ryan filed immediately. The relief in his voice when he told me was faint but unmistakable, as if he could finally breathe without her shadow pressing on his chest. Ashley fought. Of course. Claiming stress. Miscommunication. Anything she could. But every excuse collapsed under the weight of documentation. Meanwhile, Ava Turner filed her own divorce petition, citing adultery and using the same footage as corroboration. Cole lost his contracts with the marina. His reputation fractured beyond repair. Ashley's design studio suspended her indefinitely, citing ethics clauses in her agreements with clients. The law didn't move quickly, but it moved steadily. Each piece of evidence landed exactly where it belonged. And for the first time since this began, I felt the balance tilt toward justice. It was a Tuesday morning when the local news crew caught me in the grocery store. I was choosing tomatoes when a reporter approached. Camera already rolling. She asked if I was Margaret Williams, Ryan's mother. The groom in the now infamous wedding video. I didn't deny it. The questions came quickly. Did I know about Ashley's affair? Did I create the footage? Did I intend to humiliate her? I didn't give them the clean confession they wanted. But I also didn't hide. I said that sometimes the truth needs help finding daylight. That when someone you love is being deceived, you have two choices: look away or act. By that evening, the clip aired across every channel. Some praised me as brave. Others called me vindictive. But the debate only fueled the reach. For the first time, I wasn't a shadow at the edge of Ashley's story. I was the one holding the light. And when Ryan appeared beside me in a later interview, saying plainly, "She saved me," the tide of judgment turned. Whatever names they called me, I had already won. In the weeks that followed, the noise around us slowly dimmed. Ryan moved into his own apartment, a quiet space filled with secondhand furniture and sunlight. He began therapy, something I had hoped for but never pushed. And he admitted how much he needed to learn about boundaries. He no longer answered Ashley's messages. He no longer let anyone speak over his own voice. For me, the battle was already finished. I didn't crave applause or headlines. I wanted my son free from a woman who planned to uproot his life and twist him into something smaller than he was. One evening, I printed a single still frame from my footage, the beach at dawn. Waves curling under a pale sky. On the back I wrote, "Truth is greater than pretty." Then tucked it into a drawer. That was enough. Justice had found its mark. And the pieces of our lives, fragile as they were, finally began to settle back into place. Ashley eventually left for California. But not on her own terms. The annulment went through. Her business contacts dissolved. And she was forced to release a video statement. She admitted the affair, apologized to Ava, and asked for privacy as she started over. It wasn't redemption. It was consequence. Cole stayed behind. His marriage gone. His contracts canceled. He took shifts repairing boats at a smaller dock. Far from the marina where he once taught sailing lessons, his life shrank to the size of his choices. Ava, meanwhile, gained full custody of their children. She returned to her ICU shifts with a steadiness that only truth can give. Her face lined with fatigue but also relief. Ryan signed the final papers and closed the chapter. He didn't rush into dating again. Instead, he rebuilt friendships he had neglected, worked long hours, and found comfort in being his own man. Eventually, he reconnected with Elise Parker, a colleague who valued him for who he was, not who she could mold. As for me, I didn't chase a spotlight. I kept the USB locked away. A relic of a storm I chose to unleash. Justice was never about spectacle. It was about making sure no secret, no matter how carefully hidden, could strangle my son's life unchecked. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it struck a chord, don't leave quietly. Share your thoughts in the comments. And let me know where you're watching from. And if you want more stories of truth and reckoning, remember to subscribe. Your voice matters here.